Right, so first thing to do is to cut the floor out of this socket, which will allow me to get the soldering iron in. Oops, snapped it. These sockets are quite brittle. Maybe I should have squeezed it together while I did this. So that was kind of successful, but I've snapped it at the end there, and these appear to be very fragile. I'm going to try take two and see if I can cut these big parts first. I snapped it when these big ones were being cut here. So I'll squeeze it together while I'm doing it this time. Here we go. That's one. Oh no, that one just disintegrated. So that one cracked there instead. Oh yeah, look at that. And I did the other end, and it just disintegrated on me. So maybe I'll just try a knife instead. I've got that bit cut and I've got that bit cut, and I need to go through. This was super tedious. I managed to cut through each of the four like thick sections on these. And I've managed to do that just by grinding it away with this really crappy knife. This has actually turned out to be way harder than I thought it was going to be. Is this it? Yeah, it's very crumbly. Ooh, there we go. So there's the bottom of it. I think that is a success. But yeah, this is super fragile. I didn't think I only needed one socket. I thought, oh, buying 5, that's overkill, but maybe not. That looks a lot better. And I suppose I'll put a shitload of flux on it. Just dab a bit of solder on these corner pins. Tack this thing on. It's make or break time. Put loads of flux. This is where I melt the socket or burn my hand. It doesn't sit very flat. And let's just see if I can get the rest of these pins soldered. One of the sides looks pretty good. It's got a bridge there and a couple of bridges, but I'll get rid of those. God, you can't get to those pins with a multimeter anymore. Now this is in. I'm just going to clean up this flux and then see if I shorted any pins out. Whether I've actually connected them all is another matter. So it looks like I didn't short the pins, or I've cleaned up the short that I made, or the bridges. I don't like the look of that one. Well, hopefully I've not screwed this. So there's my installed socket. My soldering's not very good because, well, I'm not very good at soldering. When I've examined them, they seem to look like they're connected correctly. That just took me way longer than I'd like because I'm just not very good at this. But I could have done that way easier, I think. Now I know what I'm doing. I did want to practice with this socket, but I didn't have a board that I could practice on that had the same pin pitch. I just decided that I'm going to have to go for it. Hopefully I've not damaged anything on the board, which is the main thing. So I'm just going to boot the computer without the RAM chip in. The socket's in, but the RAM chip isn't. Uh-oh. That's bad. Well, that's disappointing. Right, so I went through with the multimeter and I had a look, and I think there was one bridge in there. It looks like I've actually managed to take a little bit of the solder mask over one of the traces, and it looks like it was getting onto the trace next door. I've fixed that as well. So again, I've still got no chip in the socket. I'm just going to power it up and see if we don't get a green screen. Appears to be super dead. Now I'm getting a 12-volt supply. Where's the rest of it? Why aren't you coming? Why isn't any power coming in? The bad news is I basically made a mess of the soldering because I'm not very good at it. And what I've done is, like, the solder masks come off some of those traces that pass in between the pins, not the ones on the pins themselves. It's making solder bridges on these like 4 messed up pins in the middle there. So this is the day from the future, and I'm just going to point out what went wrong here. I've got this socket in. This is the U17 RAM chip where I'm putting the socket, and some of these pins here had got bridged with solder, and I was trying to get them off with solder wick and it just wasn't melting and all kinds of stuff. And I think I'd gone a little bit too aggressively with the soldering iron, and I probably, you see this red trace here, which is data line 5. I'd scrubbed off the solder mask over the top of that. So I'd managed to like get all the pads connected and all to the socket of the chip, and I'd got rid of the bridges between these pads, but there was actually a solder bridge being created between this pad and this data line, because I just couldn't stop the solder from bridging across there, because this is a really, really tiny gap here. So I think I'm going to cut my losses here and take out the socket. Just say we're not putting a socket on here. because of my inexperience, I've basically messed it up. So take the socket off with hot air and then just clean up the trace and hopefully not done any serious damage. So here we go again. Kapton tape. Let's see if I can get this socket off. It's a real shame, I'm like nearly there, but I've just not managed it. So yeah, it's just me being experienced. It's a shame because I've got one of the sides, the first side of the chip, I was like, I didn't really know what I was doing. And then the second side, I just kind of like nailed it first time. I was like, oh yeah, it was dead easy and it went on dead quick. Now comes the salvage operation. Right, so again, I'm just going to warm the board up a bit. Undo the damage I've done. I'd rather have the working machine than destroy it. Right. Let's try and get all the pads. Please. There we go. Yeah, I can see the damage I've done there. There's just a little bridge there that I was just never going to get rid of. Ah, damn it. I can probably just clean this up without solder wick. There we go. That one. So hopefully I can just get to the point where the board's just back the way it was. It's not a total disaster if it powers up again. So it's always possible that I did some damage if I powered it with these traces like shorted. So it's questionable. Oh, what have we got? Ah, we're back. So I'm back to where I was. I tried to get the socket on, I really did, but it just didn't want to go. So basically I failed to restore the RAM chip. I've put my computer back in working order. Couldn't get the socket on without it bridging. And if I'd had a bit more experience, I probably would have just done this first time. So that's just, I'll chalk that one up to inexperience. So if I get a 1 megabyte chip RAM upgrade and just stick it there, I'm back to 1.5 megabytes, which would be a weird amount for an Amiga, but it'd be a working Amiga. So next step would be to, for now, just reassemble it and try and get, I think I might just get the 1 meg chip RAM upgrade and restore it to at least a 1.5 megabyte Amiga.